The red masonry pencil snapped between my fingers just as Grant Mercer said, "This is why people question your loyalty, Mara." One half of the pencil bounced off the conference table and rolled beneath Colin Reese's chair. Behind Grant, Northline Architectural Supplies bid glowed inside an amber box on the wall monitor. $684,200 for the replacement terracotta on the Bellwether Hotel. Northline belonged to Grant's cousin. I had rejected the bid 11 minutes earlier. Grant planted both hands on the table. Reverse the rejection and send it back through review. Which part of my reason is inaccurate? His face changed at that. Not much. Grant had spent 20 years learning how to get bad news across active scaffolding without spreading panic. His anger usually narrowed him. "This isn't a deposition," he said. "No, it's supplier review." Across from me, Denise Hall stopped turning her coffee cup. Colin stared down as if my broken pencil had landed in his lap instead of on the floor. I clicked back to the rejection note. Northline lists terracotta fabrication as an in-house capability. It doesn't own a kiln. It hasn't submitted mold experience, glaze control records, or breakage history. The production schedule is copied from Prairie Fire Ceramics budget quote, and the number is 42% higher. You don't know what's included in that number. That's why I requested a breakdown, and Evan provided one. He provided 4 new labels for the same total. Colin made a small sound that could have been a cough. Grant looked at him, and the sound died. Through the conference room glass, Chicago rain blurred the unfinished copper cornice samples, lined along the windows. Calder Historic Restoration occupied the 4th floor of a converted printing warehouse, where every flat surface eventually collected brick chips, sealant tubes, or something wrapped in foam. Our conference table had a white ring from a limestone poultice test nobody admitted leaving there. Grant straightened. Northline can hold the kiln slot and give us 90-day terms. Prairie Fire wants 30% up front. The Bellwether is already 6 weeks behind. I know the schedule. Then act like it. The insult was quiet enough to sound professional. That was one of Grant's better skills. I took my hand off the mouse. I am. His gaze dropped to the 2 halves of the pencil. Red dust marked my thumb and forefinger. "Reconsider it by Friday," he said. "That's an instruction." The meeting ended without anyone saying so. Denise lifted her laptop. Colin retrieved my pencil from beneath his chair and placed it beside my legal pad with the care of someone returning evidence. "Casual Thursday," he murmured. It was Wednesday. I almost laughed, which made Grant's expression worse. When the others left, he closed the glass door. "Sit down," he said. "I'm already sitting." He exhaled through his nose and took the chair across from me. Up close, he looked more tired than angry. His safety glasses had left shallow dents in his silver hair. There was gray mortar on one cuff of his blue shirt. He'd come straight from the Bellwether, where crews were opening the upper facade and finding twice as much corroded steel as the survey drawings predicted. That mattered. Grant never used an office crisis to avoid a field crisis. It was one reason I had trusted him for so long. He picked up the longer half of my pencil and turned it between his fingers. "Do you remember the Wabash job?" Every frozen loading dock minute of it. Evan found us 400 square feet of matching pavers in Ohio on Christmas week. He put them on his own credit and drove the last pallet in because the carrier quit. He did good work. Exactly. That doesn't make this price clean. His thumb rubbed over the printed letters until they disappeared under red. "You think everything comes down to clean or dirty. No, I think supplier relationships need disclosures. You think a form creates a relationship. It doesn't. A person does." He set the pencil down. "Prairie Fire will not reserve that production window without a deposit. The client won't release the deposit until the revised structural allowance is approved. Evan can bridge the gap. For $200,000? He's carrying risk." "What risk?" Grant's chair creaked when he leaned back. I am trying to keep 200 people from standing around a scaffold in October, waiting for decorative clay. Then let Prairie Fire show us its financing terms, and let Northline price the financing separately. I don't need you teaching me how to structure a purchase order. You asked me to reconsider. I ordered you to reconsider. The rain clicked against the glass. Somewhere beyond the room, somebody dropped a metal sample board, followed by a curse and a quick, "I'm good." Grant's eyes stayed on mine. 9 years earlier, he had pulled me out of a trailer full of superintendents who called every supplier problem a purchasing problem. He had told them I was the only person in the room who knew why their Indiana limestone was sweating brown streaks. Afterward, he'd made me rewrite my own job description and put authority to reject non-compliant bids in the second paragraph. I wondered if he remembered that. I wondered if he remembered and hated me for it. "I'm not trying to embarrass you," I said. "Then stop doing it in public. You put your cousin's bid in a supplier review. That sentence is exactly your problem. What sentence would you prefer?" He gave me a long look, then rose. "Friday, Mara." He left the broken pencil on the table. My office was barely an office, a narrow room with one exposed brick wall and a window facing the tracks. Every few minutes, an elevated train slid past close enough to make the glaze samples tremble in their rack. I kept the expensive ones in foam-lined drawers and the ugly ones on the sill. Architects always wanted to see the ugly ones. A terracotta corner finial from the Bellwether sat beside my monitor. It was the size of a dinner plate, deep green with brown pooled in the carved leaves. Rain darkened the old glaze almost to black. Simone Beck, the client's preservation architect, had spent 3 weeks rejecting match samples before I suggested she compare them wet. Prairie Fire's 4th sample had matched. I opened the Northline submission again. The company had a real warehouse in Joliet, 6 employees, a clean safety record, and strong freight references. Evan was not a man with a cell phone and a logo pretending to be a supplier. He knew which carriers would stack fragile crates and lie about it. He knew how to get a liftgate truck into an alley built for horses. On 2 smaller jobs, he had found discontinued slate while my national distributors were still composing polite emails. He also did not make terracotta. The bid breakdown Grant called sufficient contained 4 lines. Custom fabrication, $421,000. Specialized packing and handling, $76,800. Project coordination, $91,400. Escalation and contingency, $95,000. No unit quantities. No labor assumptions. No carrier estimate. No financing rate. I opened Prairie Fire's budget quote from 3 months earlier. It had been issued before destructive testing revealed the full replacement count, so I expected differences. Instead, the quantities aligned almost perfectly with Northline's revised package: 86 sill units, 44 spandrel panels, 12 corner finials, 619 field pieces. At the bottom, in Prairie Fire shipping manager Ruth Navarro's blocky notes, was a line I remembered because it had made our field superintendent laugh. Corner finials to ship in 6-cell orchard crates. Do not top load. Northline's technical narrative said, "Decorative corner units shall be protected in proprietary 6-cell orchard crates, with no top loading permitted." I read both sentences twice. Denise appeared in my doorway holding 2 paper cups. "I bring a peace offering," she said. "Is one of those bourbon?" They frown on that before payroll closes. She set a coffee beside me and looked at the finial on my desk. "That thing looks judgmental. It's a leaf. It knows what it did." Denise was project controller on Bellwether, which meant she translated field mistakes into numbers the client could survive hearing. She had no patience for drama unless it affected cash flow. Then she could remember every decimal anyone had ever tried to move. She shut my door with her heel. "Grant asked me to model Northline as a schedule mitigation. Did he give you support for the price?" He gave me the phrase strategic supplier flexibility 6 times. Expensive phrase. Almost $100,000 by itself. I turned my monitor so she could see the two documents. Her expression lost its humor as she read. Same quantities? Northline rounds 2 categories, but yes. Could Prairie Fire have quoted Evan separately? Of course. That's not the issue. The issue is whether he's adding value or hiding the source, and whether the client is paying 42% for undisclosed financing and coordination. Denise took a sip of coffee. You're going to put both in the portal. It was not a question. The original quote belongs in the bid history. Grant can remove you from the project. He can remove my access going forward. The upload will stay in the audit trail. That sounded rehearsed. I've had a strange morning. She sat in my visitor chair, which forced her knees toward the sample drawers. I'm not telling you not to do it. I'm telling you Grant thinks he's saving this project. I know. That makes him harder to stop. I know that too. Her eyes shifted toward the mortgage statement half hidden beneath my notebook. I turned it face down. My former partner, Elise, had signed over her share of the condominium 6 weeks earlier. Keeping it had seemed sensible when the alternative was selling into a bad market and moving during Bellwether mobilization. It felt less sensible when I calculated the monthly payment without my expected bonus. Denise noticed everything and volunteered almost nothing. It was why I trusted her. You still have until Friday, she said. The bid is rejected now. You know what I mean? I did. At 3 that afternoon, Evan Mercer walked into procurement carrying a white bakery box and a full-size mock-up of a shipping brace. He resembled Grant around the eyes, though Evan smiled more easily and dressed like a man who expected to crawl beneath a truck at some point in the day. His Northline jacket had grease on one pocket. He set the bakery box on Colin's desk. Diplomacy, he announced. Colin opened it. These are from the place with the pistachio donuts. I take rejection seriously. Evan brought the wooden brace into my office and leaned it against the wall. 5-ply, heat-treated, removable crosspiece. Prairie Fire's standard brace split on that Davenport Church shipment. You've been talking to Prairie Fire. Obviously, as their distributor? As the party trying to make this package work. I pointed to the chair. He remained standing. Why didn't you identify them as the fabricator? We're still negotiating. You listed fabrication as an in-house capability. Northline holds the purchase order. Northline warrants the package. Northline pays Prairie Fire whether Calder pays us on day 30 or day 90. That's financing and distribution. Neither requires you to imply you own a kiln. He glanced at the judgmental finial. You know how many shops can hit that glaze? 3 on paper, 1 so far. And that one wants cash Calder doesn't have authorization to release. Then price the bridge. I price the risk. Show me. His smile faded, though his voice stayed even. Would you approve us if the total came down? If the scope became transparent and the price was supportable. So no, that wasn't a no. It was your version. He finally sat. Grant says you're the best procurement person he's ever worked with. He also says you can turn a life raft into a compliance violation. That sounds like Grant. He's underwater on this one, Mara. So you charge him for air? Evan looked at me for a long second. Then he surprised me by laughing. Okay, he said. I deserve that. He leaned forward, forearms on his knees. I have a warehouse lease starting in November. 2 freight contracts contingent on volume. I can carry this purchase because my bank will lend against a signed Bellwether order. Prairie Fire gets its deposit. Calder keeps its slot. I hire 2 coordinators and stop being the guy people call when their regular supplier screws up. There it was, not theft whispered in a back room, but ambition presented as mutual rescue. And the client funds your expansion, I said. The client gets its building. At a markup, it hasn't been shown. His jaw tightened. You think the big distributors show every layer? I think you claim the work is yours. I'm putting my name on it. That means it is mine when something breaks. And when it doesn't? Then everyone congratulates the architect. I smiled despite myself. Evan stood and adjusted the wooden brace against my wall. "Friday," he said. "Give me a real path. Send me a real breakdown." He paused at the door. "You know, Grant can't back away now just because you made this personal." "I didn't make it personal. You rejected his cousin in front of his team. You bid on your cousin's project." For the first time, Evan had no quick reply. After he left, the office smelled like coffee and pistachio sugar. Colin offered me half a donut as if feeding an animal through a fence. At 5:40, most of the field staff had gone. Rain streaked the windows, and red tail lights crawled along Lake Street below. I opened the Bellwether procurement portal. The system asked whether the supporting document should be visible to the client at the next formal review. I selected yes. I uploaded Prairie Fire's original quote beneath Northline's rejected bid, added the date, source, and comparison note, then placed both halves of the broken red pencil in my leather sample case. The confirmation appeared in plain gray text, "Document added to permanent bid history." A moment later, another message appeared, "Project role updated." Grant had removed me as Bellwether procurement lead. I read the message until the elevated train passed and shook the finial against its foam pad. My name had been replaced by Colin's. I still had read-only access, which meant Grant wanted me to see what happened next. I closed the portal, put on my coat, and carried the wooden shipping brace Evan had left into Grant's office. He was standing over a set of facade elevations with his sleeves rolled up. One corner of his desk held a hard hat, a laser measure, and 3 unopened packets of antacid. "You left this with me," I said. He glanced at the brace. "Evan left it. It isn't part of an approved submittal, so it can't stay in procurement. Put it in the sample room. Colin can do that." His jaw moved once. "You got the notification?" "Yes." "I was going to talk to you in the morning. After you changed the assignment. After I had time to get out of wet clothes and eat something." He was still wearing the shirt with mortar on the cuff. I looked at the brace in my hands, then leaned it carefully against his filing cabinet. "You removed me because I attached the source quote. I removed you because I gave you a direct instruction, and you decided your interpretation of policy outranked me. My interpretation is the policy. That sentence is why we're here. We're here because your cousin wants the client to pay him $200,000 to pass along another company's work." Grant's face hardened, but he kept his voice low. "We are here because the Bellwether has a hole in its budget, a hole in its schedule, and actual holes in its upper facade. You keep treating Northline's margin like it exists in a vacuum. Then show the client what it buys." Evan is revising the breakdown. "Did you know Prairie Fire was his source when you put the bid in review?" Grant looked down at the elevations. For a moment, I thought he might answer honestly. "Go home, Mara." "That isn't an answer. It's the only one you're getting tonight." I picked up the shipping brace again. "Leave it," he said. I did. The next morning, my Bellwether folders were gone from the project shelf. Colin had transferred them to his cubicle and arranged them in a precise row, tabs facing out. He was 29. Eager and good at numbers in the way that made him suspicious of numbers other people touched. Until that week, I had considered that a promising trait. He stood when I walked past. "I didn't ask for this," he said. "No one ever asks to inherit a facade package. I mean your role. I know what you mean." He lowered his voice. "Grant said it was a workload correction." "Then you should ask what work he's correcting me toward." At 9, I found out. An email from Grant assigned me purchasing closeout on 5 completed projects: attic stock, warranties, final supplier releases, missing care manuals, and the small unpaid invoices that survived because no one wanted to spend an hour solving a $600 problem. It was necessary work. It was also work we usually gave to a coordinator. At 9:15, People Operations sent me a meeting invitation titled Performance Alignment. Denise appeared beside my desk and placed a wrapped breakfast sandwich on my keyboard. "What is this?" I asked. "Preventive maintenance. I'm not hungry." That has never stopped machinery from failing. She returned to her office before I could object. The performance meeting took place in a smaller glass room with Grant and a woman named Natalie from People Operations who wore a green cardigan and typed every sentence as though it had arrived by subpoena. Grant's written warning said I had displayed inflexibility, undermined managerial authority, and created reputational risk by exposing unresolved internal pricing discussions to a client-facing system. The source quote is a client document, I said. Natalie looked at Grant. Is that disputed? Grant's mouth flattened. Ownership isn't the concern, process is. The process requires bid support to stay with the bid. Natalie typed. Grant slid the warning across the table. This is not another supplier review. The signature line acknowledged receipt, not agreement. I wrote that beneath my name anyway. Grant watched me at it. Your annual discretionary bonus is frozen until this is resolved. There it was, a clean number beneath all the vague language. How long is resolved? I asked. 60-day review. Bellwether's deposit decision is in 3 weeks. Natalie stopped typing. Grant's eyes sharpened. Those events are unrelated. Then 60 days seems arbitrary. Mara. I capped the pen and handed it back to him. I acknowledge receipt. At lunch, I opened my mortgage spreadsheet and changed the bonus cell to 0. The monthly remainder turned red. I ate Denise's cold breakfast sandwich over a close-out file from the Ashland Conservatory, where a supplier had delivered 23 spare roof tiles instead of 24. The missing tile had held up final payment for 4 months. By 2 o'clock, I discovered that the field team had installed the 24th tile after a wind crack and never updated the attic stock count. I closed the issue, released the invoice, and copied the superintendent. He responded with a photograph of a green glazed roof and the words, "You are a witch." I printed it and taped it beside the Bellwether finial. If Grant wanted closeout, he was going to get disturbingly good closeout. For the next week, I chased care manuals, corrected warranty dates, and found a limestone supplier who had been waiting 92 days for payment because someone entered its suite number as an invoice total. The work had a soothing honesty. Either the spare anchors were in the storage cage or they weren't. Either the sealant batch remained under warranty or someone had bought a very expensive tube of wishful thinking. Bellwether moved without me. I knew because the portal sent read-only notices whenever Colin revised the package. Northline's $684,200 total disappeared from a single amber bid box and returned as 2 separate scopes. The fabrication package was now $476,000, $5,600 below Prairie Fire's original quote. The second package, specialized logistics and project coordination, was $208,200. The total had not changed by $1. Grant had made Northline look cheaper by moving its margin out of the material comparison. In the client cost log, the coordination package appeared under General Project Conditions, 6 pages away. Denise came into my office after most people had left and shut the door. "Say it quietly," she said. "That depends." She set her laptop beside my finial and opened the current cost report. I'm supposed to carry the coordination scope as schedule protection. Whose instruction? Grant's. Did he provide a duration analysis? He provided a red bar labeled exposure. Terrifying. I thought so. I scrolled through the linked assumptions. The manufacturing duration had been reduced from 22 weeks to 18, but the supporting schedule still showed Prairie Fire's original 22-week production window. Northline had created the appearance of acceleration by overlapping the deposit period with shop drawing approval, as if Prairie Fire could begin custom molds before Simone approved the profiles. "They can't release molds off preliminary drawings," I said. Grant says Evan got verbal confirmation. From whom? Evan. Strong circle. Denise rubbed her forehead. "If I challenge it now, Grant will know you're involved. You brought it to me. I brought it because I don't like hiding $200,000 in general conditions. Then don't make this about me. She looked at the cost log again. I pointed to the version menu. Save this one before you revise anything. Keep Grant's instruction attached. Ask for the manufacturing confirmation in writing. And when he tells me I'm slowing the job, ask which date he wants you to certify. That was the language Denise trusted. Dates were not loyal or disloyal. They simply happened, and then project controllers had to explain them. She saved the version. 2 days later, a long rectangular box arrived from Northline addressed to Colin. Inside was Prairie Fire's next glaze sample, packed in gray foam with a Northline transmittal taped across the lid. Colin brought the sample into my office after Grant left for the Bellwether. "I want your opinion on the color," he said. "You have Simone's wet comparison standard. I want your opinion on whether she'll hate it." "She enjoys hating samples. It keeps us honest." He set the panel beside the old finial. The new glaze was close. A deep bottle green with iron brown pooling around the carved leaf veins. Under dry office light, it looked too bright. "Water," I said. Colin filled a paper cup at the sink and poured a thin line over both pieces. The sample darkened. The difference nearly vanished. "That's unsettling," he said. "Buildings get wet. I'm aware of weather. You joined estimating. I couldn't assume." He smiled, then noticed the paper label on the sample's back lifting at one corner. "Northline's documentation has been sloppy." "Sloppy how?" "Grant says they're still setting up the project system. Evan sends clean documents, then revised ones come through with different file names. Nothing major." I ran a fingernail under the loose label. It peeled back enough to expose torn white paper beneath. "Do you have a pencil?" Colin asked. I opened my leather sample case. The 2 broken halves lay where I had put them. I took out the longer one and laid the side of its red core almost flat against the hidden paper. With light strokes, I shaded across it. Pressed lettering emerged beneath the color. PF-BW-G4, Prairie Fire, Bellwether, Glaze Sample 4. Colin stared at it. They relabeled it. They transmitted it under their name. Is that unusual for a distributor? Not if the fabricator is disclosed. He looked toward my closed door. I didn't know Prairie Fire was making it until yesterday. You reviewed the bid. I reviewed Northline's revised bid. Grant told me Prairie Fire was a sub-tier production partner, but he said the source relationship was commercially sensitive. I let the broken pencil rest between us. "Colin, did you see the original submission?" "Only the cost summary." "The capability statement?" "No." "The original technical narrative?" His discomfort answered for him. I turned the sample over and pressed the Northline label back into place without smoothing it down. "Take a picture of the batch code," I said. He hesitated. "Why?" "Because Simone approves glaze by batch. If Northline changes the label again, the approval needs to remain tied to the actual manufacturer." "That sounds reasonable when you say it." "It is reasonable." "It also sounds like I'm collecting evidence against Grant." "You're documenting a sample you're responsible for approving." He took out his phone and photographed both labels. At the door, he stopped. "He says you're trying to prove he's corrupt." "What do you think?" "I think he's trying to save the schedule." "That wasn't my question." "No," Colin said. "It wasn't." He carried the sample back to his desk. The following Monday, he returned with a quantity worksheet and closed my door without asking. "I need you to tell me I'm wrong," he said. The latest structural survey had added replacement units on the hotel's west elevation. Colin had merged field counts, architect revisions, and Northline's pricing sheet. The result increased the order by 12%. I traced the formulas down the page. "Your field pieces are right." "That's not the part I'm worried about." The corner finials appeared once under decorative units and again under west elevation alternates. 12 pieces at $4,850 each, counted twice. "You're wrong," I said. His shoulders dropped. "Just not in the comforting direction." I showed him the duplicate reference. Removing it cut $58,200 from the revision. Colin sank into the visitor chair. I sent this to Grant Friday. Did he approve it? He forwarded it to Evan for final pricing. Then correct it now. He'll ask why I came to you. Tell him you wanted a second review. He'll ask why I didn't go to him. Because he's the director, not a quantity surveyor. Colin laughed once, then covered his mouth. Put the correction in the portal, I said. Don't fix it offline. He'll be furious. He'll be more furious if Simone finds it. That afternoon, Colin uploaded the revised count and credited me in the note. At 4:30, Grant walked past my office without looking in. At 4:32, my read-only Bellwether access disappeared. At 5, Denise forwarded me a calendar invitation she had received from the client. Accelerated Deposit Review Northline. My name was not on it. Beneath the invitation, Denise had typed one sentence. Simone requested the complete procurement history. I stared at Denise's sentence until the words stopped looking like language. Then I deleted the forwarded invitation from my calendar. I did not delete the email. The distinction felt small and absurdly important. The next morning, Grant was waiting beside my desk when I arrived. He held a printed copy of the client's request for the procurement history. The wooden shipping brace from Evan now leaned behind him, as if he had brought a witness. "Did you contact Simone?" he asked. "No." "Denise?" "She forwarded me an invitation." "I asked whether you contacted her." "No." He studied my face. "Did you ask Denise to request the bid history?" "No." "Then why did Simone request it?" "You should ask Simone." "I'm asking you, and I'm answering." Around us, keyboards had gone quiet. Colin was pretending to label a sample box with intense concentration. Grant lowered his voice. "You put an unresolved vendor document into a client-facing portal, and now the client wants the record. Don't act like those things are unrelated. They're directly related. That's what bid history is for. You are not to respond to Simone. Join that meeting or discuss Northline with anyone outside Calder. If she contacts me directly, refer her to Colin." Colin's label tore beneath his pen, Grant noticed. "Is there a problem?" "No," Colin said. "Cheap label." Grant turned back to me. "Do you understand?" "I understand you removed me from the project." "That wasn't the question. It's the answer that governs what I do next." His expression tightened. For a second, I saw the version of him who had once backed me in rooms where backing me cost him something. That version seemed tired of me. The feeling was mutual, which hurt more than anger would have. "Do not make me terminate you over this," he said. The office remained silent after he walked away. A train rattled past the windows. Colin peeled the torn label from his box and dropped it in the trash. "Cheap label," he repeated. I sat down and opened a warranty spreadsheet. At 10:17, an email arrived from Ruth Navarro at Prairie Fire Ceramics. She had sent it to Colin, Grant, Evan, and me, probably because my name still appeared on the original request for quotation. "Mara and team, we have not received an executed purchase order or the required production deposit for Bellwether. Our courtesy hold on the September mold slot expires Tuesday at noon. If released, next availability is late November. Northline asked us to maintain the hold based on pending client funds, but we cannot continue reserving kiln capacity without commitment. Please advise who is authorized to proceed." The message sat on my screen with the plainness of a loose brick. Northline's revised schedule showed the kiln slot as secured. I forwarded Ruth's email to Calder's project record with one sentence: "Received as original sourcing contact. No action taken due to reassignment." Grant appeared in my doorway less than 5 minutes later. "I told you not to involve yourself." "I didn't." "You filed the email. It concerns a schedule commitment in the client cost report. You could have sent it to Colin. He was already copied. What exactly are you trying to accomplish?" "An accurate record." He stepped into the office and shut the door. "You think the record is going to save you from the way you're behaving?" "I think the record is part of the work." Evan is finalizing the deposit arrangement. Ruth says he needs the client's money. He needs the purchase order. The bank releases his line against the contract. That isn't Northline carrying the project for 90 days. It's Northline borrowing against the client's commitment, which still gets Prairie Fire paid. After the client authorizes an accelerated deposit, it was told Northline could bridge. Grant pressed his fingers against his eyes. The schedule language is being updated, he said. It was presented to the client yesterday. You don't know what was presented. I saw the version before you removed my access. His hand dropped. This is what I mean. You are standing outside a moving project throwing policy at it. No, I'm standing where you put me. He looked around my narrow office, the closeout binders stacked on the floor, the wet glaze photograph, the old finial beside my monitor. His gaze landed on the mortgage spreadsheet beneath my notebook. I can end the performance action, he said. The shift was so clean it frightened me more than the threat had. What would that require? Write a limited recommendation. Northline for fabrication and logistics, subject to final schedule confirmation. Colin can handle the rest. Prairie Fire is the fabricator. Northline is taking contractual responsibility. Then the recommendation should say, Northline as distributor, Prairie Fire as fabricator, with the margin disclosed. We are past that. Because Evan signed a warehouse lease? Grant's head turned slightly. He told me, I said, he needs the Bellwether order for his credit line. That is none of your concern. It became my concern when you asked me to certify his price. I'm not asking you to certify the price. I'm asking you to acknowledge the delivery structure has value. How much? What? How much value? His face closed again. I waited. He opened the door. The offer expires when I leave this room. Then it expired before you came in. He stood there another second, one hand on the glass. I made you a senior manager because I thought you understood more than forms, he said. I understood you. That stopped him. Not for long. Grant walked away, leaving the door open. At noon, my bank processed the mortgage payment. The balance remaining in my checking account was enough to make every lunch in the Loop look irresponsible. I ate crackers from the emergency sleeve in my desk while closing out a copper roof warranty. Denise arrived with 2 apples and placed one beside my keyboard. Do you maintain a produce drawer for emotional emergencies? I asked. I'm project controls. We plan contingencies. She bit into the other apple and leaned against the file cabinet. Grant marked Prairie Fire's quote obsolete. In the portal? In the current comparison. Reason given. No direct financing capacity. That wasn't a bid requirement. I know. He's building a record that Prairie Fire failed. I know that too. Did you save the prior version? Denise gave me a look. Right. Stupid question. Colin attached Ruth's email to the schedule risk item. That surprised me. Grant let him? Grant hasn't noticed yet. He will. Yes. We listened to the office murmur beyond the glass. Someone in estimating was arguing about whether a carved lion counted as a repeating unit. At Calder, even ordinary disagreements sounded faintly medieval. Denise lowered her voice. Simone didn't request the procurement history because of your attachment. Then why? The client's cost consultant couldn't reconcile Northline's total. He found the coordination package under general conditions and asked what it was coordinating. So the split caused the review. The split and the accelerated deposit. Your document gave them something to compare it with. Grant had created the question. I had preserved the answer. I looked at the finial on my desk. Water from the sample test had dried in pale arcs around its base. Are you going to the meeting? I asked. Yes. Will Colin? He's presenting the procurement summary. Poor Colin. He's become very interested in antacids. The door opened without a knock. Colin entered carrying 3 revised quantity sheets and closed it behind him. Grant wants Northline's total reduced by the duplicate finials, he said. It should be, I said. He wants the credit applied to contingency, not the base quantity. Then the corrected piece count won't match the price. That's what I said. Denise took another bite of her apple. How did that go? He asked why I was suddenly a procurement philosopher. Promotion, I said. Colin almost smiled, but his face stayed pale. He told me to issue it. Did he put that in writing? Denise asked. No. Ask him to. He'll know why. Yes, she said. Colin laid the sheets on my desk. There's something else. Northline sent a revised technical narrative. It removes every reference to in-house fabrication. That's appropriate, I said. It's dated the day before the original supplier review. I looked up. File metadata? Denise asked. PDF title block. The upload date is current, but the document date says it predates Mara's rejection. That could be a template error, I said. Colin nodded too quickly. That's what Evan said. Then ask him to correct it. Grant says the date is immaterial because the scope is current. It's material if the client thinks that was the document we reviewed. Colin sat in the visitor chair. His knees nearly touched the sample drawers. I thought you were trying to punish him, he said to me. Grant. Yes. Do you still? I think he believes the project is safer if he controls every version of the story. Denise looked down at her apple. Colin continued, and I think he believes that because he's usually the person who knows the most. That's often true, I said. Not about this. No. He breathed out. I'm going to attach both technical narratives to the history export. Don't do it as a favor to me. I'm doing it because my name is on the summary. There was the boundary I had been waiting for. Not friendship, ownership. Good, I said. He gathered the quantity sheets. Before leaving, he looked at the broken red pencil lying beside my sample case. I had forgotten to put it away after exposing the Prairie Fire batch code. Can I borrow that? He asked. What for? Northline covered the old label on the mock-up crate. I want to see if there's another code underneath. I handed it to him. He returned 20 minutes later with red dust on his fingertips and a photograph of the original Prairie Fire packing label. The orchard crate dimensions matched the sketch attached to Ruth's budget quote, down to a handwritten revision changing the cell width from 17 inches to 17 and a quarter. Colin placed the broken pencil on my desk. Cheap labels, he said. By Tuesday morning, Prairie Fire's courtesy hold had expired. Ruth sent a formal notice releasing the September mold slot. The same notice offered to reinstate it for 48 hours if the deposit arrived because another project had not yet finalized its glaze selection. Grant treated the reprieve as proof that his plan still worked. He scheduled the accelerated deposit review for Thursday and revised Northline's schedule again. The new version removed the words, secured kiln slot, and replaced them with priority manufacturing access upon funding. Evan came to my office late Wednesday carrying no donuts. He closed the door, then noticed the shipping brace was gone. Grant took it, I said. He likes physical evidence. So do I. He sat without being invited. The confidence he had worn before had thinned around the edges. His jacket was unzipped, and his shirt collar had wilted. You got what you wanted, he said. Did I? Prairie Fire released the slot. Grant's ready to bite through steel. My bank wants the executed order before they'll finalize the line. Simone wants a procurement autopsy. You told us you could hold the slot. I believed I could. Based on what? My relationship with Ruth. Ruth runs shipping. She doesn't extend credit. His eyes flashed. You think I don't know that now? I let the question sit. Evan looked at the green finial. I can cut the coordination fee. How much? Bring the total margin down to $120. That's still $120,000 for financing, freight management, breakage warranty, site sequencing, and carrying the supplier. You aren't carrying the supplier. The client deposit is, I'm carrying the balance. Then show the cost of the balance. I can't give Calder my banking terms. You can show a financing rate without handing over your bank password. He rubbed both hands over his face. The resemblance to Grant was strongest when they were tired. If this order falls apart, I lose the warehouse, he said. Grant vouched for me with the landlord. That detail landed differently from the others. Grant had not simply favored his cousin, he had tied his own word to Evan's expansion before the bid survived review. When did he vouch for you? I asked. Evan looked away. Before Bellwether? It was a broader growth plan. Before the bid, yes. And Grant expected Bellwether to support it. He expected Northline to earn it. Then why didn't you bid transparently? Because transparent small suppliers stay small. His voice sharpened. You know what Calder pays national distributors. You don't ask them to expose every source and dollar. They have polished portals and account executives, so their margin feels official. He was right about that, and I hated that he was right. I would support a disclosed distribution fee, I said. I would support real logistics costs, a reasonable financing charge, and a breakage allowance tied to actual risk. I won't call you the fabricator, and I won't say you secured something you didn't secure. Grant says if you recommend the structure, Simone will release the deposit. Grant removed my authority. You know she trusts you. That is not authority. It's more useful. He leaned toward me. Come tomorrow. Tell her this package is workable. If Simone asks me, I'll answer her questions, which means you'll kill it. It means I'll answer her questions. Evan stood. At the door, he turned back. Grant really did fight for you, he said. I know. He thinks this is betrayal. So did he call it that before or after he changed the documents? Evan's hand tightened on the doorframe. He's not the only person who changed them, he said, and left. At 4:50, Simone's assistant sent a revised meeting invitation directly to me. Attendance requested for original sourcing and glaze history. I forwarded it to Grant with no comment. His reply came a minute later. Conference room, now. Grant stood at the far window when I entered. Rain had returned, tracing the brick through the glass. You will answer only direct questions, he said. I always answer direct questions. That has not been my experience. He faced me. If you turn tomorrow into a performance, there will be no place for you here afterward. I didn't request the meeting. You built it. No, you did. His expression went still. The next morning, I carried my leather sample case into the large conference room. Denise was already there with the cost log open. Colin had arranged the procurement export in front of him. Evan sat beside Grant, a legal pad untouched beneath his hands. Simone entered with the client's cost consultant and placed the wet match finial sample in the center of the table. Then she opened her laptop and signed into the procurement portal. I sat beside Denise and kept my hands folded over the leather sample case. Grant began before Simone had finished connecting her laptop to the wall monitor. The decision today is time-sensitive, he said. Prairie Fire has offered a final 48-hour reinstatement of the September production slot. Northline can execute immediately upon authorization of the accelerated deposit. Simone entered her password. We understand the timing. The revised structure reduces the fabrication package below the original market quote and transfers warranty, freight, and coordination risk to a single supplier. The client's cost consultant, Lauren Briggs, glanced at the printed cost report in front of her for an additional coordination package of $208,200. That figure includes contingency, Grant said. How much? Northline is prepared to reconcile against actual conditions. That wasn't my question. Evan shifted beside him. We can provide an allowance breakdown after contract execution. Lauren wrote something in the margin. Grant moved to the schedule. He was good at this part. He explained mold release, glaze approval, firing windows, cooling time, inspection, and freight without looking at his notes. He showed how a November delivery would force winter enclosure changes and extend scaffold rental. Every consequence was real. That was what made his presentation dangerous. He could arrange true facts around an unsupported conclusion until the conclusion felt inevitable. The deposit protects roughly 9 weeks of downstream exposure, he said. In practical terms, Northline is the only path that preserves the current facade sequence. Simone looked at Colin. Is that procurement's recommendation? Colin's throat moved. Grant answered first. It is the project team's recommendation. I asked procurement. Colin opened the binder in front of him. The current recommendation was prepared after my assignment to the project. It's subject to disclosure of the underlying fabricator and confirmation of Northline's financing and schedule commitments. Grant turned toward him. That language was superseded. It's in the history export, Colin said. Simone clicked into the portal. I stayed quiet. The wall monitor changed from the schedule to the bid summary. Northline's revised fabrication number appeared at the top, $476,000. Beneath it sat the separate $208,200, logistics and coordination package. Lauren leaned toward her laptop. Open the original submission. Grant put one hand on the table. The original submission doesn't reflect the revised commercial structure. That's why I want to see it. Simone selected Bid History. The portal displayed every saved version in order. Northline's original $684,200 bid. My rejection note. Prairie Fire's source quote. Grant's later split. The duplicate finial correction. And the revised technical narratives. Documents Grant had marked obsolete remained gray but visible. Simone opened Northline's original bid and Prairie Fire's quote side by side. $684,200, $481,600. The difference appeared in the comparison column automatically, $202,600. For the first time that morning, Grant stopped moving. Lauren scrolled through the quantities. These are the same units. The package has evolved, Grant said. Not in this version. 86 sills, 44 spandrel panels, 12 corner finials, 619 field pieces. Same production duration, same payment milestone. She enlarged the shipping notes. The words 6-cell orchard crates sat beside each other on the screen. Simone touched the wet match sample in the center of the table. Prairie Fire made this. Yes, Evans said, as Northline's production partner. The batch label identifies Prairie Fire as the manufacturer. Your first capability statement says Northline performs custom terracotta fabrication in-house. That language was imprecise. Colin opened his binder. It was removed from the revised narrative. And the revision is dated before Mara rejected the bid, Simone said. That was a title block error, Grant said. Then why wasn't it corrected when Colin asked? Grant looked at Colin. Colin's face had gone red, but he did not look down. I didn't receive an answer. Evan leaned toward Simone. Northline is not claiming we own Prairie Fire. We're offering a wrapped supply package. Large distributors do this every day. Lauren nodded once. They do. What additional work does Northline provide for $202,600? Working capital, coordination, freight management, breakage warranty, site sequencing, and schedule risk. Lauren pointed to Ruth's notice in the history. Prairie Fire released the kiln slot because Northline did not fund the deposit. The deposit is contingent on our contract. Then Northline isn't supplying the working capital needed to hold the slot. The Bellwether deposit is. We carry the balance. At what financing rate? Evan's mouth tightened. That information is commercially sensitive. The rate can be disclosed without disclosing your bank agreement. He glanced at Grant. It was quick, but everyone saw it. Denise rotated her laptop toward Lauren. The schedule record may help. Grant's chair scraped softly. Denise. She kept her hand on the computer. The version presented last week showed an 18-week production duration. Prairie Fire's support remained 22 weeks. The apparent reduction came from overlapping mold production with unapproved shop drawings. Simone's eyes narrowed. Prairie Fire agreed to start molds before profile approval. We requested written confirmation, Denise said. We didn't receive it. The current schedule says priority manufacturing access. That language was revised after Prairie Fire released the slot. Grant looked down the table at me. The anger in his face had burned past heat into something colder. "You wanted a complete record," he said to Simone. "You have one. What it does not show is the commercial pressure under which these decisions were made. Mara rejected a workable supplier during an active schedule crisis without bringing me an alternative funding structure." Simone finally turned to me. "Why did you reject Northline?" Grant's warning from the day before seemed to stand in the room with us. I answered the question. Northline represented Prairie Fire's fabrication as its own capability, copied Prairie Fire's quantities and production notes, and added $202,600 without supporting the cost or disclosing the source. Its offer of 90-day terms depended on an executed Bellwether order and an accelerated client deposit. The schedule benefit wasn't confirmed by the manufacturer. Could the bid have been made compliant? Yes. How? Identify Prairie Fire as the fabricator. Price Northline's distribution, freight, warranty, and financing separately. Tie contingency to defined risks. Correct the schedule to match the manufacturer's commitment. Did you ask for that? 3 times. Evan looked at the table. Simone clicked on my rejection note. Grant's comment says you were instructed to reconsider based on strategic supplier value. I reconsidered the available support. It didn't change my decision. You uploaded Prairie Fire's quote afterward. It was the source document behind Northline's pricing and belonged in the comparison. Grant's voice cut in. You uploaded it after I told you the commercial structure was unresolved. Yes, knowing it would create this exact appearance. I looked at the 2 prices glowing behind him. I didn't create the difference. Silence settled across the table. Grant stared at me as if I had taken something from him. Maybe I had. For years, his certainty had been part of how the company worked. I had protected it when it deserved protection. Now the portal showed where it ended. Lauren closed the cost report. "I can't recommend this deposit." Simone nodded. "Bellwether will not authorize Northline's package as submitted." Evan's hand flattened over his untouched legal pad. "If we miss the 48-hour reinstatement, your winter exposure exceeds my entire margin." "Then we need to use the 48 hours, Simone said. She looked at me, Colin, and Denise. "Can Calder negotiate directly with Prairie Fire and define a separate logistics scope before the hold expires?" Grant answered. "Mara is not the procurement lead. I'm making a client request," Simone said. "I want the person who established the source relationship involved. Colin should remain on it, and Denise should validate the cash and schedule." Colin opened a clean page in his binder. I said, "We can have terms to you tomorrow." Grant stood. "I need a recess." He left the room. Evan stayed seated for a few seconds, then gathered his legal pad without having written on it. At the door, he looked at me. "You could have warned me how this would land." "I did." He nodded faintly. "Yeah." Then he followed Grant out. Ruth joined our negotiation by video that afternoon. She was direct, impatient, and more offended by loose scheduling language than by Northline's markup. Prairie Fire agreed to restore the September slot for the original 30% deposit, provided Simone approved the final profile drawings by Monday, and Calder accepted a staggered shipment. Denise rebuilt the cash curve. Colin corrected the quantities. I divided freight, breakage handling, and site sequencing into a separate scope that Northline could price without pretending to manufacture anything. Evan returned a proposal at 6:20 the next morning. His price was $54,000. It included dedicated freight coordination, crate inspection, alley delivery scheduling, and replacement administration for transit breakage. He attached carrier rates, labor assumptions, and a 5% handling contingency. The financing fee was gone because Bellwether would pay Prairie Fire directly. I called him into the sample room before we submitted it. "This carrier excludes top-load damage," I said. "The orchard crates can't be top-loaded. That doesn't stop a terminal crew." He took the quote, read the exclusion, and swore under his breath. "Use Kessler Freight," he said. Higher line haul cost, but their fine arts endorsement covers stacking damage. You know that route? I know every carrier between Prairie du Sac and Chicago that has ever broken something and blamed a pothole. That was the Evan I could recommend. We revised his scope to $57,800 and sent the full package to Simone. Prairie Fire at its supported price, Northline as disclosed logistics coordinator, and a schedule built around actual approvals. Bellwether authorized the deposit with 4 hours left on Prairie Fire's offer. The first payment went directly to the kiln. Calder's internal review lasted 5 weeks. The portal history made the facts easy to establish and the motives harder. Grant had disclosed that Evan was his cousin, but he had not recused himself from the selection. He had also changed comparison categories, allowed revised documents to carry misleading dates, and presented an unconfirmed schedule advantage to the client. The operations committee removed his authority over supplier selection and transferred him back to field delivery. He kept his director title and his salary. Bellwether still needed someone who could sequence trades through crowded scaffold bays, and Grant remained exceptionally good at it. Evan gave up the larger Joliet warehouse. He negotiated a smaller unit in the same complex and kept Northline's 6 employees. Prairie Fire later hired him to coordinate 2 difficult urban deliveries, both at disclosed rates. My performance warning disappeared from the system. My bonus did not return. Natalie explained that discretionary compensation had already closed for the quarter. I explained that my new role would not be discretionary. We spent 3 meetings negotiating the language. I became Senior Procurement and Controls Manager, reporting jointly to Calder's Operations Lead and Project Controls. Conflict of interest reviews required my written concurrence or a documented override visible to the client team. It was less money than the missing bonus and more authority than Grant had intended me to keep. He came into my office after the announcement. The old finial still sat beside my monitor. The photograph from Ashland remained taped above it. "You got your independent review," he said. "I negotiated it." Same result. No, different process. He looked toward the tracks as a train passed. "Evan lost the warehouse. He kept his company. You think that makes it clean?" "No." That answer seemed to unsettle him. He picked up the broken red pencil from beside my sample case. "I did fight for you." "I know." "I thought that meant you would give me room when I needed it." "You asked me to put my name under something that wasn't true. I was trying to build a supplier we could rely on. You were trying to make Evan into that supplier before he earned it." Grant turned the pencil in his hand, rubbing red onto his thumb. "You made me look dishonest," he said. "You called me disloyal because I wouldn't help you hide the markup." His eyes met mine. Then he set the pencil down with both halves aligned. "I shouldn't have said that," he said. It was not enough to repair what he had broken. It was enough to tell me he could see the break. The first finished corner finial arrived in an orchard crate in early December. I went to the Bellwether for the installation. Grant had the scaffold bay cleared, the rigging checked, and the masons ready before the truck backed into the alley. Evan inspected every brace himself. The new piece rose past rows of dark windows and settled into the northwest corner as lightly as if the building had been waiting for it. I used a fresh red masonry pencil to mark the approved joint line. Rain deepened the glaze until it matched the old facade. When the empty crate was ready to return to Wisconsin, I opened my leather sample case and took out the pencil that had snapped in the supplier review. I placed both halves inside the 6-cell orchard crate. Then I closed the lid and watched Prairie Fire's label remain exactly where everyone could see it.